Alright, we got some competitive Total War as the Ladies Quest tournament run by the ODM clan is into its final stages. I believe this was a best of 5 series in the quarterfinals between ODM the Green One and Tactical Lich, who has his own channel and does multiplayer commentary on YouTube, just like me. Link to his channel will be down below. Throg, King of Trolls, and Ku'gath Plaguefather in a battle between Nurgle and Norsca. Very different builds on display here. You might think it would just be a blob fight between two melee factions, but Norsca has some plans to break down the box and let the Skin Wolves feast. Now, Kugath himself is very interesting. Since he got that Mortis Strain, he's become potentially one of the most oppressive lords in the game, for certain factions anyway, like literally unkillable, 5,000 plus value easy, but he is still very vulnerable to shooting, despite that massive health pool and all the other advantages he confers. Green One is utilizing one of the filthiest examples of Nurgle debuff stacking that I've personally ever seen. It's Slime Trail for minus melee attack and speed, Icon of Eternal Virulence from the War Shrine, Wasting Sickness from the Barons of the Bog, Swarm of Flies from the Demon Spew, and Poison debuffs as well. So all of that together will be bolstered by Abundant Glory heals from the Cultist, and the idea is weapon damage, speed, all kinds of things are going to be severely curtailed on the Norscan side if they decide they want to climb in the boxing ring and trade blow for blow. Not recommended, even for Norsca. It's like a slightly overweight middle-aged man who thinks he can take a punch or two from Mike Tyson. Probably not. Norsca has some options to avoid the Charnel House, though, and maybe force Nurgle into a more spread-out kind of affair, which generally comes in the form of javelins. Very elite Nurgle army here, too, with the Festering Stooge Exalted Plague Bearers and a front line of lesser demons. Funnily enough, though, the most important units on the Nurgle side may just be the cheapest. 4 Poison Warhounds, Vanguard deployed in the rear. For Tactical Lich and the Norskins, there are 4 Skin Wolves, very versatile werekin unit, one of my favorites on the Norscan roster, a front line of Marauders, and a host of Hunters with bonus for large jabs, perfect for killing a particular nasty Great Unclean One. Throg will almost certainly not beat Kugath in a 1v1. I'm not sure there's any character in the game right now who can, but he will perform better than most, especially with some decent cycle charging. He has regen and that innate bonus for large. Sorcerer has Plague of Rust and Searing Doom, and then there are 4 Vanguard deployed Marauder Jav Cav to boot. So right from the jump, we know Green One wants to keep his build high and tight, very compact and together, but he has his sights set on one particular unit on the other side of the field. Those are the Hunters with Javelins, because they represent the biggest threat to his Blob of Doom. Not just to Kugath, but also to the AoE healing he has from that Cultist. Bit of skirmishing from Tactical Lich early, Marauder Cav are out in front, but if you feel like he may have already gotten a bit too aggressive in his positioning, you would be correct. His entire backline is exposed to this Warhound ambush, and right now there is nothing nearby to protect them. Now, I would argue this early, you don't need to have all your Skin Wolves deployed so aggressively anyway. It's Nurgle, it's a box build, they aren't going anywhere. You're not in a rush to surround them. It's not like you're being blasted apart by artillery and under tons of pressure. They have no skirmishers, no scary missile units to harass your flanks that you need to zone out with speed. There should probably be 2 fast movers like those Skin Wolves with mass in your back line just by default, and once you are absolutely sure there is no ambush or Vanguard play happening, and the melee scrum has joined in earnest, then all your Skin Wolves can flare out and go around the rear. But this misplay will cost the Norskins dearly. Within the span of about 15 seconds or so, all 4 Hunter units are being eaten alive, and about half of them are dead or running for the hills. Disastrous start, because they need that shooting to banish Kugath. The doggos are just going to happily munch on these light skirmishers, right? And if you're Nurgle here, you couldn't ask for a better opening to the battle. Honestly, I think there's a lot of nerves and panic and surprise happening right now. Norsca's been very slow to react, and their Skin Wolves still haven't really responded to the threat yet. Been about a minute since the ambush was sprung, and still they're just kind of standing around. So, okay, not an ideal situation for Norsca, but not all the Javelins are dead, not yet anyway. They still have some opportunities to spread the field and skirmish and maybe get some of those Javelins back online. Balance of Power isn't really reflecting the loss, but I would say that's a big win for Norsca right there for sure. Rather, big win for Nurgle. Overcast Plague of Rust lowers Kugath's armor from 70 down to 10. There are some Hunters that will be able to utilize that debuff and make Kugath hurt with their Javelins, and the Plaguefather will respond with a Rancid Visitation upon the Sorcerer Hero, single target, direct damage nuke that will make his butthole pucker and his milkers turn to jelly. Kugath is enjoying the show so far, painting a canvas of pestilence with his aura of decay, which makes sending melee marauders anywhere near him a fruitless endeavor. The stats of any werewolves or even Throg, if he decides to close in, are gonna be hilariously bad. There's like 5 separate passive debuffs all stacking together around Kugath, which will basically cut the effectiveness of any unit by more than half. And when you combine that with the gigantic HP pool and the regen being conferred by the cultists on the War Shrine, it's just way too much to deal with in melee, which is why Norsca has invested so much in range and why losing all those javelins early was such a problem. Searing Doom causing a bit of ouchie amongst the Plague Bearers of Nurgle, and those Marauder Cav on the right flank have been taken to Pound Town by the biological grenades of those Festering Stooges, the Exalted Plague Bearers. Skinwolves, anything that gets close to Kugath, they're gonna be in pain, but I do think Norsca has to commit some stuff here just to tie up the blob and give those javelins more time to fire in, and Kugath is really low. It does not take very long when you've dropped his armor value to 10, effectively a naked, great, unclean one, and then hit him with all those bonus for large javelins. The poor guy would normally tank through that by overcasting Fleshy Abundance, which would synergize exceptionally well with the box style he's going for, especially because it doesn't have any unit cap like Invocation of Nahak or Earthblood, so you can effectively heal your whole army if everything's close together, but you're seeing just how susceptible Kugath is to shooting, and just a few javelins that survive that doggo assault are filling Flubber with whale hunting harpoons, and he is getting very close to the edge. Another Plague of Rust as more javelins fire in from the rear, and it's not a super cohesive box for Nurgle right now. They're defending some attacks from Skinwolves in the rear. Barons of the Bog have such good debuffs with their Wasting Sickness and Poison that they're going to be able to go toe-to-toe with bonus for large Werekin, but pushing back the Marauder Cav isn't gonna come in time, I don't think, as Kugath is one volley from death, and the Whale Hunters are gonna bring down the beast. Great Unclean One, the Greater Demon, just outright deleted from the game, and I wouldn't say that the Hunters have been used exceptionally well this game. I think the positioning at the start was, I mean, it was definitely not ideal, right? Most of them were killed off, but the ones that survived were used very well in tandem with that Plague of Rust, which kept hitting Kugath, and he could not survive for long. So, okay, they've lost their Great Unclean One, they've lost their Avatar, he's sent back screaming into the void. How does Nurgle respond? Well, they still have the healing and the leadership aura from that cultist on his War Shrine. Throg is low, leadership is about to break him, actually, it looks like. If the Barons of the Bog get a surround off, he will run, should be able to return, but Norsca's looking pretty thin here, and there's a lot of elite infantry still on the Nurgle side. Festering Stooges will be regenning this entire time. Combine that with the Giver of Abundant Glory from the cultist. That's even more regen. They can get their models back. That's a tough nut to crack for Norsca as well. A lot of their army has routed. Marauder Horsemen hit by the Curse of the Slug and being run down by infantry or warhounds out on the flank. More Marauders are cycling back into the fray, and Throg is looking to escape because I think if the Barons had a full surround off on the King of Trolls, it wouldn't kill him very quickly, but Throg would never be able to push his way out of that scrum, so he was right to escape while he had the opportunity to do so. But he's going back in now, and he will need help. We've seen some really good volleys from the Festering Stooges as biological grenades have reaped a terrible toll on the Skirmish Cav on the Norscan side, and the Demon Spew are also better than any infantry that Norsca has on their side of the field. The benefit that Norsca has right now is that they have Skinwolves as their main killing power alongside Throg, and all 5 of those units, the 4 Skinwolves and Throg himself, can regen. So even if they get low and rout, they'll get a bunch of health back and then be ready for more fighting. And that's what we're gonna see here, as Tactical Lich attempts to claw his way back into the game. Skinwolf cycle charging, working in tandem with the Chaff infantry, and trying to crumble some of these lesser demons. Without question on the back foot right now, balance of power is in favor of the Plague God, but Lich has already answered the biggest question, how to deal with the Greater Demon, who is now likely being spanked by Nurgle somewhere back in his garden in the Warp. I'm not sure why the Sorcerer and those infantry are at the top of your screen all the way like halfway across the freaking map. Norsca really needs to get their ass moving and get everything into the scrum now, because Throg is isolated. He has a little bit of help from the psycho-charging on the Marauder Horseman side, but they're really not going to do a whole lot to Forsaken, or especially to the Festering Stooges, who are in the scrum as well. But just bodies around Throg will certainly help. I think one of the bigger problems that Nurgle will have right now, as another Searing Doom rains down from the Sorcerer, is that they don't really have a duelist. Now, Plague Bears, with their high base weapon damage, even though they do have somewhat low MA, will hit hard against the low armor of everything Norscan right now. That includes the Skin Wolves, that includes Throg, that includes the Marauder Cavalry, and the Marauder Infantry. The issue is they've run out of burst damage because they don't have Ku'gath Plaguefather and his Rancid Visitations, and they don't have his really terrifying dueling capabilities, which you don't really expect from a Great Unclean One sitting on a gigantic toilet seat. But Kugath is a solid duelist. He's really hard to hit, more than often hitting is a good way to put it, I guess. But when he lands an attack, it is extremely damaging, as you'd expect from a 500 weapon strength monster. So killing Throg might prove difficult here, because he regens the entire time he's fighting. Whether he's in melee or not, yeah, you might be able to rout him off, but they have no way to finish him unless they can get a full surround off with the Barons of the Bog. But first, to do that, they would have to kill off these Skin Wolves, who are looking relatively healthy right now. And I do like the idea here with Searing Doom. Basically, every time Throg charges into melee, they're dropping that bombardment on the Plague Bears, who will take additional damage from magical sources. There is no more skirmish power on the field for Norsca except a handful of javelins at the top of Alpine Ridge. But the Skin Wolves are waiting their opportunity to strike. They're biding their time, waiting for a bit more health to come back. Cultist of Nurgle is very healthy, as you'd expect, but has no Mortar Strain effect and no ability to clear chaff infantry. Causes terror, I guess, but really bad melee stats, no wave clear spells to speak of. So Norsca has the magic advantage here because Nurgle has lost their caster. So yeah, they are very much back into this game. As Barons of the Bog, there's a couple toads there as well. They have an opportunity to isolate that cultist, and I think if I am Tactical Lich here, that is what I'm going to try to do. Now, way easier said than done, right? There's still a lot of Festering Stooges, the Demon Spew, some infantry that will be able to surround and protect their hero, and then in turn, the hero will confer leadership bonuses to that infantry and keep the demons on the field and heal them as well. Army abilities being tossed their way. Fecundity, the second army ability for the Plague God, also healing up. So all kinds of healing sources for Nurgle right now, but nothing crazy bursty that will just like immediately get a unit back to a healthy position in the way that Fleshy Abundance would. And if any of those demons do get to a crumbling state, the healing will not be enough to keep them on the field. They will break. They will disappear back into the warp. Some of them are getting pretty close to that threshold. Balance of power is still in favor of the Plague God as Throg plunges deep into the Nurgle ranks, right next to the Palanquin throne of the Plaguefather. Throg is surrounded by relatively high weapon damage units. The Skin Wolves are providing a little bit of cushion for him. Throg is trying desperately to take that cultist out, but it's hard to get him to focus on the right target. As we know, if you are surrounded, a legendary lord or single entity monster will typically change targets a lot as it's being attacked. Even if you keep force attacking on one specific thing, it will continue to change targets on occasion. So not able to get a ton of attacks in on the cultists right now, and that may be game, set, match for Norsca. They're beginning to break, but again, they have no way to chase him off the battlefield. They have zero maneuverability at this point because the Barons of the Bog just crumbled out, and Throg is fun, I guess. Basically, every time the King of Trolls is charged into melee, that debuff stacking has made him comically bad at dueling. His melee attack and weapon damage essentially cut in half, but still, he fights on. And still, Nurgle has no real good option for killing him off. And that battle of attrition that Nurgle is so well known for winning, they will almost always outlast you when it comes to these kinds of fights. It might be swinging a little bit back towards Norsca because of their own innate regen and the fact that they still have their caster dropping Searing Doom on occasion. Exalted Plague Bearers are really close to hitting the heal cap. and another Plague of Rust, this time on the Cultist and his War Shrine, as the Skinwolves and Throg attempt to isolate and destroy him. Dropping the hammer, a few javelins getting thrown in there for good measure as well. Another Searing Doom hitting the Festering Stooges. And their regen can only go so far when they're taking nukes for 700, 800 damage a pop. They're getting beat down by Throg. Norsca has a shot at winning this game, which I would have laughed at you if you said that at the start of the match. I mean, losing all those javelins right from the word go, I'd just be like, dude, they have no way to win this game now. Kugath was just gonna kill everything by himself, but the handful of whalers that survived with their harpoons brought him down, and that means that the Cultist and his Exalted Plague Bearers are alone in a, well, I was gonna say sea of bodies, but it's not. There are a sea of corpses around them for sure, but living Norskins, not very many. It's basically just the King of Trolls and a few Skinwolves and a few Marauders, but it's gonna be enough, because the Cultist has 35 MA and like 30 MD, or 44 MD, I guess, with Caught of Flies. Not good in these kind of situations. And a perfect target for Throg and the Skinwolves to gangbang. And that's it. It's over. Mass rout. And Tactical Lich is going to take this game against ODM Green One. Well played. And I do think the micro is relatively unimpressive in this one. There was a lot of standing around. I think there was some nerves and those kind of things coming into play here. It happens. It's happened to me many times in the past. It's happened to the greatest players on the planet. You get caught flat-footed. You don't respond well. It happens. Initially, it was a complete and total disaster. But after that first couple minutes of the fight, after the Poison Warhounds had done their dastardly work, Tactical Lich did a great job with Plague of Rust and his remaining javelins to focus fire down Kugath, and a lot of that just came down to builds and army composition. Once a few javelins remained and managed to kill the Lord, and Nurgle ran out of their mobility, they didn't really have an option for killing Throg off, and so in a fight that would normally favor Nurgle 9 times out of 10, especially with all that debuff stacking, which is so effective in those melee grinds, the innate regen of Norsca, the 4 Skinwolves and Throg, and the Sorcerer still being alive to cast spells, outlasted Nurgle in a battle of attrition, which was pretty cool to see. So hope you guys enjoyed that tournament match, and there will be more from this tournament, I believe, coming soon. I'll see you in the next one.